When I was a kid, I knew about Huntington's disease because my grandpa had HD, and he was at home. He was in a medical bed in the house. He couldn't get out or do anything. My grandma was taking care of him. But at that point, I didn't know that my mom could have it. I didn't know, kind of the implications that it had. There was a little bit of secrecy back then with Huntington's disease that there still sometimes tends to be now. I think people are becoming more open about it, but there is still some secrecy around it for various reasons. But basically, I knew about it. I was sad for my grandpa to really be in a hospital bed. He couldn't get out. He could really only say, two things. He could say Ma, because that's what he called my grandma, and he could say Pepsi, because he loved Pepsi. And I would feed him chocolate ice cream in his hospital bed. But then when he passed, and I realized that my Uncle Alan, even though he was quite a bit younger than my grandpa, he started having symptoms and having some problems and issues. And this was back in the day where there was no, Google. I couldn't just look it up. I literally had to go to an encyclopedia, look up Huntington's disease, and find 2 sentences that said it was a neurological hereditary disease, and that was pretty much it. That's all it had. So back then I knew very little about this disease that was in my family. We didn't talk about it a whole lot, and it took me a while, probably till I was a teenager, that I realized, okay, maybe my mom could have this.
Hi. I'm Jeff, and this is Sue Teal. We're from Shelby Township, Michigan, and Susie just is 61 years old. I just turned 60. I think she's had about 15 years now. I've been taking care of her for the last 12 years. I did work prior, and at some point it became clear that we couldn't leave her at home alone anymore. So that kind of worked out. She used to tell me how the things that she used to do easily was becoming much harder at work. And I think that's when she was starting to realize that she needed to be tested. I was aware of it, wasn't real familiar with it. Right when we started going out, her father had just passed away from Huntington's. And of course her brother Alan was dealing with it too. So I was seeing it and was aware of it. Well, I think I was aware that it was a 50-50 chance that she was going to have it. Of course, we hoped she didn't. She still gets her coffee every morning. Yes, she does.
Now, when my mom, found out that she had Huntington's disease, we're processing that as a family. She's, losing her job. They're having financial struggles. She's having these, different issues that she can't do the things that she used to love to do, which is hard because my mom was so fun, independent, worked multiple jobs. And to see her go from that to someone that can hardly get up, have a walker, have a wheelchair. Now she can't even get off the couch, really. It's like that's a tough pill to swallow. So when that was going on with my mom, that's when I really got involved with the HD community in Michigan. So I think everybody deals with Huntington's disease a little bit differently, and for me, the way that made me feel the most in control was to be as involved as I could be. So that's really when I started running support groups, doing the fundraisers. I also joined the board, which I am on in a more like a fundraising committee way at this point, but I have been the president, the vice president. I've been grooming people to take those roles over the years, and right now our president, Don Peasley, he's excellent, and just to have people who are on the board doing these different roles, I think for certain people it helps us feel like we are in control of trying to help find a cure, trying to help our families, trying to help other people, make us feel good about giving back. So my different speaking engagements, all of these different types of things that I do, it does help me kind of cope with Huntington's disease.
I'm Karen. I am Sue's sister. I didn't really know that my dad had Huntington's disease. I was probably about 10 years old, and one of my friends said, "Oh, look, your dad's drunk again." And I knew that he hadn't been drinking, and that was the first time that I realized that something was different. I asked my mom about why people thought my dad was drunk when he was not, and she said, "Oh, well, you know that festival we went to last year, that was a fundraiser for Huntington's disease." She was involved in the early Michigan chapter, which used to be called the Committee to Combat Huntington's Disease. She didn't really tell me a whole lot about it then. I found out more from my sister Lynn. Lynn started telling me that you know, Huntington's disease was hereditary, and that, you know, we all had a chance to get it, and Lynn thought that she had it growing up her entire life. And Lynn told me about Huntington's, and Lynn was quite sure that she had it, and she lived her whole life thinking that she had it, which was a little bit unfortunate, because I think she made some choices based on the fact that she was not going to live a full life. As it turns out, she was tested when the test became available, and she was negative.
How does it make you feel that Grandma Sue has Huntington's disease?
Sad.
And
I can never understand her, talk to her.
You can't understand what she's saying?
Games. Around 2014, could understand her like a tiny bit.
So you could talk to her a little more and play some games?
Yes, but then it started to get less and less and less of what I could do with her.
Does she like when you hang out with her?
Yes.
You talk to some doctors and they're gonna work on a cure?
Yes, and then once it's done, they're now changing it.
Do you think it could maybe help Grandma Sue?
Yes.
What would you like to do with Grandma Sue if she did not have Huntington's disease?
Take walks in the summer. In the fall, roll in piles of leaves. And play games.
That sounds nice.
I'm Ray. I'm Chrissy's boyfriend, and she's in an HD family. She told me early on, like dating her, that her mom had it. So she kind of helped take care of her mom and did a ton of fundraising and research. Research for a cure for different treatments. Because right now there's nothing. There's no cure, and there's nothing even to like slow it down or really treat it. So it's she kind of told me about how she's been in it for a long time. I told her I'm trying to get involved in the different fundraising and kind of get I've talked to a lot of people about it too, kind of bringing awareness to it, because a lot of people, I ask them, "Oh, have you heard of HD or Huntington's disease?" But not a lot of people have heard about it, and when I tell them like what it's like, obviously it's a terrible thing.
There's a few good friends that stuck around, and Eleanor was one of them, who still comes every monthly. Comes monthly and takes her out to dinner, or we do dinner at our house now. Her friend Joni comes to all the HD events. Oh yeah, and her friend from Ohio, Peggy. For a few years, she actually took Susie and went to a condo and stayed for a few days. It's such a slow, progressive disease that it's hard to see it. Basically, we have our good days, we have our bad days, and bad days we try to get through, and the good days we try to enjoy.
So I am Chris Calcaterra.
I'm Nick Calcaterra.
And we are the nephews of Sue and Chrissy's cousin.
When they were younger, we talked about Huntington's. I was very involved in the local chapter through Royal Oak, and we always went to the walkathon. I started facilitating the support group in Royal Oak, and they knew about Huntington's disease. At the time, I was also taking care of my brother, Alan, who was pretty much at the end stages of Huntington's disease. So they saw him, and they knew what Huntington's disease was. We never discussed that it was hereditary. They would go with me to the nursing home, and we would go 4 or 5 times a week. And so they knew Uncle Alan. They called him Uncle-wee.
Uncle-wee?
Yeah.
Uncle-wee! And how would Uncle-wee laugh?
Ha! It was so funny.
And we would bring him to our house sometimes, and sometimes they would just go with me to the nursing home. And it wasn't until other people in the family were tested and they found out that they were positive, then, you know, my kids were old enough then that they were kind of like, well, wait a minute. If Uncle Alan has this and Grandpa had this, does that mean that you could have this, Mom? And what does that mean for us? And they actually questioned me, and they were quite young.
For a while, we were unsure of our status of, you know, whether, you know, our mom had HD or, you know, if other members in our family HD, and it did. It was, you know, it was hard for a while.
Yeah. I kind of thought it was normal at first until I started talking to more people about it, especially like, you know, younger in elementary school, and not a lot of people really knew about it. So I almost felt like our family was kind of alone or excluded a little bit. Just nobody even knew what it was. So, and when I was that young, I like really couldn't explain it as well as I can now. But
I went through the testing process actually right after they started questioning it, because I realized that this black cloud had been hanging over my life because I didn't know, and I didn't want them to have that same black cloud hanging over them. At least they would know whether they were at risk or not. So in 2009, I went through the testing process, and I did test negative, and that was quite emotional. When I was at Uncle Alan's funeral, I remember seeing your mother walking up to the front, and for some reason, I right then noticed that I knew she had Huntington's when I saw her at that moment, and I just cried and cried, and many people thought I was crying because it was my brother's funeral, but it was because I was going to have to do this with her. She was like my mother. She taught me so many things, and she was there for me for so much. I wish I could understand what she says.
Okay, my name is Amber Frampton, and I co-chair Spotlight on a Cure with Chrissy. I've been doing Spotlight on a Cure for 10 years. I can't remember the exact year, but I know one year we sold out. It was crazy. People were everywhere, and we were at 250 people on attendance alone. And we raised so much money that year. We raised $12,000. We've been lucky enough that local papers have loved us and supported us from the beginning. We've also been on Fox 2 News, and they did a little interview last year with Chris, and it really was awesome. It was probably the most publicity we've gotten in a really long time, and it really put a whole story together about a former newscaster that had Huntington's and Miss Michigan. She is affiliated with the Huntingtons, and it was just a great little coverage for us, and we were really excited about that. Chrissy was most excited because she got to be on TV, and it was like the worst hair day of her life. And so that's always your favorite moment, when you can get on TV and your hair is not up to par. Also, we were also on WWJ News Radio, and they talked a lot about Huntington's, and I got some great exposure because that's what it's all about, getting people to know what it's all about. For 10 years now, our grand total, or for 9 years because we're not at the 10th, is over close to $100,000. Yeah, like, I think it's so fun, and we want to keep it fun. We're here to have a good time and celebrate these people that are surviving and living with it. But I think that there is an underlying sadness that there's a reason why we're all here. But we need to just push through and have a good time and raise money for these people so that we can find research and we can get them better drugs and we can make their life way better. One of my most memorable years was the first time we brought in drag queens. I mean, these people did not know what hit them. I think half the crowd was really confused. They were like, is that a man dressed like a woman? And then some people were like, oh, that woman sings beautifully, though they're not singing, they're lip syncing. But at the end of the performance, the great part was they were really getting into it. People were giving them their dollar bills, and you know, the drag queens really worked that crowd, but it was a definite shock. It was a definite shock to people.
Yeah, our family has always been very involved with the HD community. Karen, Sue's sister, was very involved, and then Chrissy came along, and then she really got involved running the support groups, becoming the Michigan chapter president. She's always done a lot of things, fundraisers. She does a bowling fundraiser. All this that she's done, she actually ended up winning the HD National Person of the Year Award in 2016. That's quite an honor. The funny thing is, she wasn't there to collect the award. That was one of the one year that she wasn't there, even though she had been there the previous several years.
Do you want to say Cure HD and then we'll be all done? Last thing?
Cure HD.